Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Fullest podcast. I'm your host, Nikki Bostwick, and today we're here with Dr. Jess, who has a passion for uncovering the mystery behind the chronic illness, whether that be stealth infections, heavy metals, stress, trauma, or other environmental toxicities. She's a visionary for the future of healthcare and left her position as a board-certified internal medicine hospitalist to pursue functional medicine in order to better serve her patients by getting to the real root cause answers for why the body might be malfunctioning. Her philosophy embraces that health encompasses the whole patient, mind, body, and spirit, and Dr. Jess has become one of the most sought-after functional medicine leaders. She is known for her ability to help identify the root cause of illness, most often traced back to hidden stealth infections like Lyme, parasites, and mold. Hi, Dr. Jess.
Hello, Nikki. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for coming on. I was so excited to have connected with someone on your team. I've known about you for a long time. I found out about you on social media years ago, and I'm really excited to be here with you today. I really appreciate you and your work. I think it's so important to share the information that you have. And I think especially in this climate where we're seeing a lot of doctors being censored for sharing information that's considered alternative or misinformation. And I just think, the more we talk about it, the more we share our personal experiences. And I know you have a personal experience with it all, the better. And so that's what we're here to do. And so thank you for joining us.
Yes, of course. Thanks for that introduction. And it's crazy times we live in, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I guess a year and a half ago, if someone had told me all this, I never would have believed it in a million years.
I know. I think about that all the time because I think, if we go back a year and a half ago, I was thinking about these specific topics when it comes to vaccines. I mean, vaccines are the conversation is definitely on the news a lot right now, right? With the Pfizer and Moderna vaccine out. But that was a topic that I thought about a lot because I have a toddler and I have a history of autoimmune issues. And I personally had an autoimmune condition that just happened to show up right after I was vaccinated to go to college, and certain things started happening that just didn't seem right. Taking the birth control pill and, seeing what happened to me when I got off of it. And I just think that these are conversations that maybe have been top of mind, but then with the whole COVID thing and the fear behind not being able to, a majority of people thinking that someone else needs to tell them how to take care of themselves is really interesting. And I didn't realize how big or how many people felt that way. I went through my health challenge and I got to a point where I remember my doctor telling me, you need to just, go home and do this and think about what feels right for you, right? Having someone else tell me, do what feels right for you was so crazy to me because I was like, how did I give up my power to have someone else tell me to listen to myself? And I didn't realize that. Little did I know, everyone else on this planet is, experiencing the same thing because we don't remember that we are our best advocates. And so, I think a really big role of doctors today is to remind people that I'm with myself every single day, every single hour, every single minute. So I know if something's wrong. If I come to you and you're the best doctor ever, you'll know, but you're going to ask me my symptoms and stuff like that, So I'm just curious. It's a wild time. I'd love to kind of go back and start with, how you got into all this. Obviously, you were in internal medicine. So, what made the switch? What happened?
Gosh, so many things. So, really what helped me was working in the hospital for 7 years almost, and just seeing the discrepancy in when I really started to think, gosh, a lot of health is nutrition. I was really starting to be active on social media and teach as a doctor on there before it was cool to do so. And people were like, Jess needs her own blog. They didn't understand what I was doing. And I didn't either. I just knew I needed an outlet. But social media kind of taught me. I'd see things that would catch my attention online, and then I'd go down the rabbit hole, and I had the background to understand the research. So that sort of, got me to get into Gerson therapy. And then that taught me the power of nutrition and plants and, nonstick cookware and properly filtered water and all these things that the hospital and regular conventional medical school never taught me. So then I was forced to kind of look at that and understand, I saw the sickest of the sick in the hospital, and they were feeding them sick food. And when I complained about it, they called me disruptive. And so it was sort of this whole domino effect for me. Gerson therapy really helped to open my eyes to everything. And then, I started to see online, like mothers talking about, their children being injured by vaccines. I started to see, seizing children in videos, their seizures stopped with CBD. All these things that medicine never taught me that seem to be working anecdotally for people. And my go-to, like my internal just intuition and who I am as a person, I'm just never able to look and be like, that person's lying. That patient's lying. That's just not, when I was really unhappy in the hospital, I could have accidentally gaslit some patients, and it was because I was unhappy. You know what I mean? It's because I was miserable in my job. And when I got out of it and I started to become happy and I started to really feel satisfied because I was truly finding root cause for patients, I started to see how all these other doctors were really just unhappy because you can tell from their reactivity.
That's a good perspective. Yeah.
And, today, honestly, you're right when you say, just to back up, and when you say everyone just has given their power away, that was such a powerful thing for you to say. I don't think many people have that awareness right now. And I'll tell you that's because when you're able to keep people in fear mode, it's a proven fact that they will be able to accept misinformation.
Yeah.
And, you're actually triggering a part of the brain called the amygdala. That's just the place of fear and anxiety in the brain. And when that's triggered continually, you can't make sound and logical decisions, especially if presented with something that's a half truth or a misinformation.
Yeah.
And it's really hard to tell what's going on nowadays because there's so much of that online, in the media. Who do you trust? And I like to think of humans as we're children, really, walking around masquerading as adults, a lot of us. And it's so naive. It's so naive and sweet to think that authorities would always have our best interests at heart. It's how naive and sweet are humans to think that, to never even enter their head that someone could be pulling the wool over their eyes.
I know.
Really.
Oh my gosh, I know. And I think about that a lot. And it's beautiful, right? To see that innocence and that trust. But it's also like, it's part of growing up to be like, okay, we are essentially animals and we're here to survive, and we need to get smart and we need to be discerning. And that's important. And we need to take care of ourselves, because at the end of the day, we're here on the planet and we're going to be by ourselves at some point. So we need to, get on that. And I don't want to die in a hospital. And I watched my grandparents die in a hospital from the staff. My grandpa, he had Alzheimer's, but then he had a heart issue but they were giving him sodium. And they were trying to balance his sodium potassium levels. But then every time they didn't give that to him, I was with him. I went to culinary school for raw food. I'm so inspired by Gerson therapy. loved it for years. It's like, I try and get everyone to watch the documentary, and it's so old and like so ridiculous. The like candle flickering. I'm like, just get first 10 minutes. But yeah, I'm like really an advocate for like plant-based healing. I'm not plant-based personally anymore, but I'm like, I definitely eat a plant-heavy diet. And I would make my grandfather his meal in the hospital every day. And the staff would look at me like I was crazy. And they literally got upset with me because I started like bringing him juice, and they said it was going to mess up his levels. And I noticed that once they would, give him the IVs, he would get sick every time. And what he actually ended up dying from was a heart attack. And I was just like, I can't with this system, and I need to figure out another way. And
they just kind of take the humanity and art out of medicine. I mean, I remember even on my surgery rotation, like they would have to cover a patient up if they were in a twilight sedation, because if they saw them moving or talking at all, I would almost pass out, because you have to pretend they're like an inanimate object to sometimes poke and prod and operate like you do on someone. Yeah. And, it's, they teach you very scientific and left brain logical things, very evidence-based medicine, which obviously has a role. It obviously is very important. Obviously, everything needs to be rigorously tested. Yeah. However, that's not the only thing. Medicine isn't art. Medicine, I mean, if everyone, most inventors and physicists, if they're honest with you, they'll tell you that they didn't discover something through scientific theory. They first had an intuitive hit. Yeah. And then they went back and tested it with scientific theory. And that's how I work too. And that's how many people work in their realm of expertise. And what is that? That's an art. That's an intuitive, whatever you want to call it. There is a right brain to the left brain. And it never, if you're imbalanced, male, feminine energy, masculine, feminine energy, left brain, right brain, logical, art, you have to be balanced. There's that in every single, there's that duality in every single discipline. And so to really be so imbalanced one way, we're leaving out a whole portion of what can help a patient population.
This week's episode is sponsored by Odama, which is tomato spelled backwards. Founded in 2018 when entrepreneur and foodie Andrew Suzuka created a flavorful sauce his picky eater daughter just couldn't get enough of, Odama is the perfect way to add a nutritious boost to your family's go-to meals. If you've ever tried looking for an organic tomato sauce, you will know just how difficult it is to come by, because tomatoes are typically found to have high levels of pesticides and herbicides, which is why I'm so happy to have finally found and able to share with you all a trusted brand that can be purchased in a pinch at your local Whole Foods store. It's also available in a fiber-rich and dairy-free vodka sauce. And as always, we love sharing special promotions just for our fullest fam. So for 10% off your order at odamontfoods.com, use code THEFULLEST at checkout. I love that. I love the intuitive hit. It's so true. I mean, it goes with every profession, right? I mean, even if you're like a plumber, it's like, yes, it's your experience, but it's like, you know what? I think this is probably happening. And it's like going back to, yeah, I love that. So, okay, I know you have so much, you're doing so much right now. You're launching a platform, and your experience is a lot with like parasites and mold. And I think mold is a really important topic to discuss, because I'm really interested, like hopefully one day I can build my dream house that's super sustainable and has like no drywall, because all drywall molds and it like freaks me out. And so I want to talk a little bit about that too, because I feel like, is mold inevitable? Like, is it always going to happen? Like, I'm curious if you've like dived into that part as well, and what people can do to maybe prevent and also how we can treat it. Because if you get mold remediation in your house, they still go like the route of what a doctor would give someone with antibiotics, right? Like you just kind of.
Nice analogy. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm just curious about all that. I know it's a lot of, I just had a lot of questions, but I'd love to discuss that with you.
Yeah. The problem is, and I'll tell people this from a mask theory, a vaccine theory, to a house theory. The further you get away from what nature intended, the more problems you're going to have. And that in the house theory means that when you have energy efficient homes where there's no adequate airflow throughout the house, you're going to have an imbalanced amount of mold growth. If you see people like, I just went to Mexico recently. If you go down to Mexico, everything is open air, indoor and outdoor, even the very nice, expensive hotels there.
Yeah.
And there's a reason for that. And most of the pueblos and homes are indoor, outdoor there too, or they're made out of clay or cement or things that don't mold because they understand the dynamics of the earth. Here, we really think that we build houses exposed to outdoors, first of all, like it rains on the wood.
Yeah.
It's really like, what is happening? And then people are surprised. Oh, I have a new house though. I'm like, yeah, but how was it built? And it's built with a lot of volatile organic compounds in the adhesives, in the carpets, if you have carpet,
Yeah.
even, in the way that they have the drywall, like you said. And then so many VOCs and just toxic compounds, petroleum-based compounds that are, you guys wouldn't even believe, like that new car smell, that's VOCs. That's volatile organic compounds that actually cause DNA damage. They've been proven in science to cause this. So it's so many problems with how we're building homes. What I prefer, what my dream house will be one day, is a prefab. And there's a wonderful company, I think my fiance mentions it's in California, and they use a lot of non-toxic products. So they really steer away from VOCs and things like that. And the prefabs are awesome. They really are built underneath something, so they don't get rained on all the time. They're not using toxic products. You can make them more open with glass, things like that. So that's the route I'm going to go to ensure that I'm living as non-toxic as I can.
I love that because I'm always wondering. I'm like, okay, what can I do? Because I know there's so many cool things. Like you can use like wool insulation, because if anyone's ever seen insulation, like I don't even know what that is. And like formaldehyde. So is formaldehyde a VOC?
Yes, it is.
Everything, even Pelotons. Like my friend, she's an ND, and she was just telling me, she's like, Pelotons are literally like drenched in formaldehyde and like lined with it before they come to your house. I'm like,
it's terrible.
It's horrible. And everything is.
Benzene. That's another one. Toluene. That's another one. There's a ton, and they're on like in carpets. That's the carpet smell. They're on new furniture. The cigarette companies had that law passed in the 70s because people were falling asleep with cigarettes in their mouth on the couches, and the couches were catching on fire and the houses were burning down, and it was a serious liability for the cigarette companies like Marlboro. So these jerks sent kids to the courts to say, we don't want to burn alive in our beds, so please keep flame retardants on our mattresses at night. And it was the cigarette companies that paid these families to go do this. And so now there's a national law that new furniture, new mattresses have to be doused in flame retardants before they're sold on the market.
I know. That's what I always wonder, like all the natural mattress companies, like Avocado Mattress and the other ones, like they don't have flame retardants, but they probably have to figure out a natural one.
They still do. They're not added. They have there's a lot of good marketing there.
Yeah.
Is what I found out. And they still have to follow the national law, but they do it as non-toxic as they possibly can.
Gosh, can we just like start our own companies like underground and not have anyone know? Yeah, I mean, it's like hard to, you don't want to go too crazy, but you also, when you know this information, and like I think about this all the time with just our mission at the fullest, because I truly believe that what's good for us is what's good for the planet, and what's good for the planet is zero chemicals. And so like when you talk about big pharma and all these pharmaceuticals that are happening, like how could that be good for us if it's not good for the soil, if it's not good for our air, if it's not good for our water? Like we're talking about our water and how disgusting it is and filled with, so many hormones and so many things. And it's like, how
the FDA the FDA does this thing where it passes like generally recognized as safe. And so they're like slightly toxic things that in these small amounts are okay, apparently, but nothing. Like, how do things bioaccumulate or not? Nothing stays in small amounts when sold in massive quantities.
Yeah.
And you're exposed to this daily. So they just don't, I don't understand how they think any amount of toxic products should be okay for us in the environment. It should not be. They should not be recognized as generally safe for the most part. Like parabens are considered under there. It's crazy.
Yeah, that is. I think about that all the time too, because it's like when I see like a product that's like non-toxic, natural, paraben-free, I'm like, yes, but all the other things are still in there. Like, you're just gonna claim that just because you don't have parabens? Like, gosh, it's such a wild time, but it's amazing how many people are waking up to it. And it's also amazing to me how many people have woken up to it, but are still like walking and waiting in line to go get a vaccine, because I'm like, wait, like what happened? I thought you understood all this. But I think it just goes back to the fear and like wanting to be safe. But then that's what we're saying too. It's just a different idea of what that is.
You know, there's a thing, I can't remember the exact saying. It's something like, if you tell a lie enough, it becomes the truth. And so people really need to turn off their television and just sit in their own personal truth. I do believe that people have their personal truth. I don't care. People could get mad at me for saying that. I don't think you have to have an authority system all the time to live your life. I'm sorry. And I don't think the public health concern should trump individual liberty. I don't think that should happen either. That's just people can disagree. That's fine. But my health is not your accountability or responsibility. It's my accountability and responsibility. And that doesn't, honestly, people are out there saying it's racist to be anti-mask. It's racist. It's racist because BIPOC can't afford healthy food or not, but I want to go give them a bunch of organic seeds so they can grow a window box full of vegetables. I want to get them walking outside in a safe neighborhood somewhere. I want to show them that, get out in the sun in the morning is a great way to rejuvenate your mitochondria. You don't need this $80 supplement, you know? I want to show them that your indigenous ancient relatives practiced homeopathy and they practiced holistic methods and they practice some of the stuff that's being called woo right now.
I 100% am on the same page. I think about that all the time, especially because I'm Persian and I'm like, no, this is the way that you might be. Ancestors lived. Like, this is the way we lived with the earth, and it didn't cost a lot of money. What happened is our government came in and they're subsidizing the wrong foods and they're making it expensive for our minorities. And that's what's racist.
Yes, that's right. That's right. You think processed GMO sugar is what people need, is what they need the government to subsidize. Give me a break. They are bought out by lobbyists. The sugar industry lobbied as much as they could for that food pyramid. You guys have no idea. It's just like the Sackler family and narcotics went after the pain scale in the hospital. That's what happened. And they lobbied for that and made you guys think that's the food that should be subsidized. The government bought it. And now you guys have to spend food stamps or like the rest of your paycheck on food you probably don't even want.
Yeah, exactly. I was just watching the documentary Gather. Have you seen it?
Not yet. Oh, should I see it?
It's so good. And they're talking about just like Native Americans and the way that they connect with their food and also like what has happened to their community and how our country like just completely, was able to take over by basically getting rid of their food system. So we like killed all their buffalo and then we had them rely on us with like canned food and like just shit food. And then that's how you can like take over people.
Yeah. I mean, when people can't afford it, they'll beg for their change. They'll beg for their rescuer. It's only natural. And they've studied the politics and PR response and how to work humans forever now, how to work the populace. And, they're shutting down healthy and organic food restaurants everywhere in lieu of big business fast food, which has been deemed essential, ironically. And then, these people are struggling. I'm sure they're having to eat things they don't want to. And big business is now successful because the government is secretly bailing them out. There is a pandemic. There are people that are sick, but this is being used as an excuse to further a certain agenda, and break the populace, because then they will ask for those checks. They will ask for the laws to be passed, which in the fine print will have things that we don't want there.
And no one can read the fine print. So
right. Someone
had the time to read fine print when they were passing the last stimulus. I mean, that's ridiculous.
And I have seen, I can't verify this, so don't quote me, but that we need to do some research there. Apparently, with one of the stimulus check bills that was passed, were thinking about lowering the national vaccine compensation amounts.
And they're already like nothing. I mean, it's just, and already people don't even know that they can like call and talk about having adverse reactions to vaccines. Like they don't know where to call. So then that's a whole issue too. I know RFK is doing a lot of work there. There's someone actually that's coming out with a system online, or maybe it's an app that's making it easier to report adverse events, because it's just
amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing. Because that's so many of these online doctors' platform is to like be character assassinate. It says a lot. It's like they've been told to character assassinate. I can't figure it out. Either they've been told to do that, or they're miserable in their jobs. All of them. That goes to show you what conventional medicine looks like these days. But definitely these doctors come on there and they say things like, there aren't that many reports given to VAERS every year. There's not that many vaccine reactions. There's not that many side effects. Like the general public knows. Do you really think they know you can report that? I don't even think primary. When I was a doctor, a hospitalist doctor, I had no idea that the vaccine companies weren't liable. I had no idea that there was a vaccine injury toll-free hotline. I had no idea that taxpayers paid out every year for those vaccine injuries.
Wow.
Like as a hospitalist MD, I did not know that. So I know the general layperson does not know that.
Yeah, I didn't know until I started looking into it too. So I'm, and that's like, when you get into it, you go down the rabbit hole and you can't, it's like too hard to believe. And then when you tell people, they just don't believe you, because it's just like too hard to swallow that like we allowed that to be part of our system. I think that's kind of part of the problem is people want to know information. So I think I know someone who's in line right now looking to get the vaccine. And I had mentioned to her, hey, like there was a recall for this one particular company. Just be careful. That's all I kind of said. And then she said, okay, well, is there anything else? Is there anything else? Like her intuition was like, should I be asking for more? But and I shared what felt right. But I think you just need to remind people to trust their intuition, and it's so far from it. So I think that's probably, it's just so amazing when you talk about, and like when I read about your work and how your whole thing is to get to the root cause, because everything is a Band-Aid these days, and everything from pharmaceuticals to even supplements, right? Like you could be like, oh, okay, like supplements are amazing and I love them. But unless you're treating something for the root cause, like if you have a mold issue in your house and you're just taking supplements for it, like that needs to be fixed too. And then also I love, we always say mind, body, spirit. People say that, but like, I know when you're saying it, it's because our body holds on to things too. And we need to move our trauma through our body. And I think that that's a really amazing thing that I've started to notice lately. I process, like after giving birth, I realized I process a lot of trauma through my body actually does shake. And it's like, before I ended up finally giving up and getting an epidural, which I didn't want. But like before that, my entire body was just shaking because I was going through something. And I think it's amazing to like, someone else might not have shaking, but just understand that when you go through trauma, you hold it somewhere so you can talk about it as much as you can. But like actually getting through it through
It's
chiropractic.
Cellularly. And I will say, I actually, during ayahuasca ceremony, I would release by shivering too, or even sweating sometimes.
Yeah. That's the point. I was going to ask you, like, what are other ways, like through chiropractic work, acupuncture, you're releasing things, but like, what are other ways that, like, is working out a way of releasing trauma, or is that kind of like it is? Yeah.
Dancing.
Yeah.
I mean, anything that gets you in the present moment and out of the monkey brain, where your perceived trauma is kind of like a thought virus, right?
Yeah.
It just continues, like you chew on it 100 different ways, usually in a negative perspective, because we're always hard on ourselves. And that's why things like plant medicines, getting into the present moment, things like, body work that helps you release things, anything that shakes the body out. This is why our ancestors had dances and rituals and plant ceremonies, because they knew that they encountered trauma every day in a very harsh world. What are we going to do to keep this out of our bodies cellularly? And that's what they did. And that's what I'm recommending to a lot of people nowadays. If you can't get into the present moment in meditation, I get it. Don't worry. There are other ways. If you love to dance, go learn some African dance. Go to some drum circle and do African dance. Do it online. Whatever your forte is that you want to learn. African tribal beats are so fun though, and they get you like out of that monkey brain into the present moment. Even just like chanting mantras, dance, for me, even just working out, and like I do a lot of Tracy Anderson videos, which are very rhythmic movements.
Videos. Yes, they're so good. And I love just like dancing and just all of her stuff. Yeah, I love that you do that.
Yeah, it gets you, it's really working on trauma though. It is. Mm-hmm. And that's another thing I wanted to say that you brought up. A lot of women don't know that birth is trauma.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Yeah. I am actually pregnant with my second.
Oh, congrats.
Thank you. I'm so excited. And I am working with a craniosacral therapist, and she like literally had me go through my last birth so that I could process it so that it's not, going to affect this one. And it's really crazy because I just think of myself as someone who's like, I do all the things, but like, it's still so important and it makes such a big difference. And I couldn't believe how much I needed to release. And I love all of this. And I love sharing it with people because like you said, it's part of our ancestry and we just need to tap back into that. And I just think like intuition and, oh yeah. Okay. What I wanted to tell you when you said, African tribal music.
Yes.
Okay. Yes. So, my sister-in-law, she went and studied abroad in Ghana and she came back. And one of the most profound things I remember her saying was she would, while she was there, someone in the community had passed away. And the way they processed grief was just so incredible because they all got together and they like scream like so loud as they possibly can. And I think it was only for maybe 1 or 2 days. And then the rest of it was just celebration, but they got everything out and she got to witness that. And I'll never forget. It was like, whoa, that is the most incredible ritual. Yeah. Like you just let it go, and you really need to do that.
This is why breath work is so powerful. And I'll tell you, breath work is a little bit like meditation. When you sit in there making you breathe in this rhythmic manner, you really want to stop about 5 minutes in. And if you can push through that, though, you'll be taken to another place. And I went to a breath work workshop one time in Southern California. And my fiance went too. And at the end of the hour, because they started out making you dance and get in your body. And then you laid down a little out of breath and continued. And they would come around and tell you if you were pausing before the inhale or pausing before the exhale, which mean different things.
Yeah.
If you pause before the inhale, you're actually blocking good things. And so they teach you how to breathe, which sounds intuitive, but it's actually not if you formed bad habits and patterns. Mm-hmm. And they basically, at the end of the class, the end of the hour, there were people roaring. like screaming at the end of the class. And it was, I mean, crying, screaming, giggling. It was a huge release.
Yeah.
And these were strangers. Can you imagine if you lived in a village with people you loved and you did that stuff?
Oh my God, it's like my dream.
I know.
Go create a village and have like a schoolhouse, a farmhouse, and just, yeah, it'd be so amazing.
Yeah. Now that is getting back to your roots right there.
I know.
Yeah. I love it.
I was actually going to ask you, I recently interviewed Zach Bush, and he mentioned something about the Rockefellers and how they, because with homeopathy and how they're trying to like make it illegal. He said that like back then they introduced a bill that was trying to make homeopathy illegal. Is that something that you know about and could chat with a little bit more with us about, or in general, if you have like, I mean, as a doctor, like how you've been targeted? I think those are really important things for people to understand when you go on Google and you look things up that maybe people have spoken about and you see that maybe it's been fact checked or censored. Like, I think these are important things to discuss.
Oh yeah, absolutely. You know, I don't know specifically about homeopathy. I do know they were trying to include a bill that would make homeopathy illegal. That is true. I didn't know that it was introduced by the Rothschilds earlier. However, or Rockefellers, maybe you said earlier.
Yeah,
I do. It's probably Rockefeller, honestly, because Rockefeller was very integral in shutting down holistic medicine in general.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
Back in the late 1800s, early 1900s. Back even when
1900s. Yeah.
Yeah, back when cannabis was still legal and on the shelves of most people. This is right when they came for all the plants, if you will. And so Rockefeller went around with Abraham Flexner, and if you've heard of Carnegie and the Flexner report, this is where this came from. They went around to the country and instituted their allopathic conventional medicine models and shut down integrative naturopathic, Chinese medicine clinics around the country in lieu of these of this new Abraham Flexner report, Carnegie report that instituted what medicine was. And so I'm sure he's talking about that. That's absolutely true. Bayer was also IG Farben back in Germany, in Nazi Germany.
Wow.
So this is history that's so quickly forgotten, if you will.
And it wasn't that long ago. I mean, when we say 100 years, like I think it was early 1900. I thought he said like 1918 or something. I mean, that's nothing. Like we've been flying for longer than that.
That's literally when things like very shortly thereafter, the DEA was formed, the FDA. This is when the DEA made, cannabis a Schedule I with no medicinal benefit whatsoever. And they did that with a lot of drugs at that point in time. It was early 1900s when all this began to be instituted, absolutely, and changed and shut down and, erased from history, if you will.
It's so interesting because talking about cannabis specifically, I mean, we've come such a long way, right? And you think about that, and it's been associated with the Democratic Party, like just progressive party in general, which is interesting to me because that has been my party for so long. But recently I'm realizing that that's also the party that is funded by Big Pharma, funded by Monsanto. I mean, they obviously fund both parties, right? They probably, for the majority, that's who they're funding for the most part. And that's what big tech is wanting. And so it's just interesting to me how like the cannabis piece fits in there. I'm like, what is it that they're, because I think it's awesome. And I just think it just doesn't make sense in that part because that is a botanical that is helping people, but none of it makes sense really.
But everything is a business to them.
Yeah.
There's no sacred space. Everything is made, and if it's not profitable to them, it's made illegal until it can be harnessed and made profitable, and then it's okay. Mm-hmm. And really, you're free unless you go against the agenda or the system. It's all that way, you see.
Yeah, exactly. I know. I can't believe it. I can't believe we're considered the most free people on this planet. And like we are going through what we're going through. I wanted to ask you, as someone who, you're starting this platform, people can have access to all your information. And I want to hear more about that because, like we talked about earlier, everything is getting censored. So having access to this type of information is going to be more and more difficult. So it's even more important. And so I'm really curious what you're building, what you're doing, and what's next.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I'm glad you asked. So we actually, let's see. So we launched December 3rd. So it's only been around about a month and 2 weeks or so. And we've got about 700 subscribers. And what it is Wellness Plus by Dr. Jess. And we have huge plans already and surprises coming. But what we have right now is a custom state-of-the-art website app. And basically, when you log in, you see a dashboard with my education courses, which are anything from kill, bind, sweat to drainage pathways to mold, parasites, viruses, Lyme, environmental toxicities and why you should care, when diet isn't enough, all kinds of different educational courses. Every 2 weeks, I have a live webinar that's 2 hours. The last one was last night, and we talked about mitochondria for 2 hours.
Wow.
I answered people's questions. They can submit their questions prior to the webinar, or I answer their questions in email if they're not too medical. Obviously, there's some liability here, and I'm not everyone's doctor.
Yeah.
So if people do request a certain medical condition, I have things called Wellness Plus Quickies, which is a one-page PDF where I do a lot of research to figure out root cause reasons and possible solutions that someone may have not looked at before from a functional standpoint. And then basically we're getting ready to film new education courses. We have tons of diet plans, PDFs, downloadable materials, and it's very, very interactive. Once a month, I have a little consult wheel I spin. The winner wins a consult with me each month. So, it's actually really affordable. It's $49 a month for all that.
Wow.
And we're constantly building and listening to feedback from our clients. We really want everyone to be happy. So next, hopefully, we'll have a community forum where people can meet each other. And I would love for people to be friends in real life that meet on my forum. That's what we're all after is community and like-minded individuals. And you're right. Some of the things I talk about, some of the blogs on there, my webinars are really out there. We're doing one on plant medicine soon. We talk a lot about COVID. I'm so sorry. So many interruptions. Oh my gosh. My dog is the best unless someone rings the doorbell. Seriously.
Aww.
Yeah. Sorry.
No, it's not a big deal. Yeah, I know. I think things like, even like, I don't know that much about ozone therapy at all. And I know that you are an advocate of it. And I'm like, I want to do all the things and I want to learn about all the things. And you just can't research that anymore. I mean, it's just like, especially ozone therapy, like the second Trump said something, it's just considered like the
crazy
thing. And you're like,
oh. What people don't know is there's 3 clinical trials that just ended, I think, at the end of December. I need to check again, that we're investigating IV ozone in other countries for the COVID. And so, I write about stuff on my platform like that. I have even like a store so you can get Cellcore products. I have ozone generators in there with a discount code. All those things that I would recommend to heal are there for people. And that's, hopefully going to be sought after because this is not the modern day book burning. I mean, they're scrubbing the net.
Yeah, I know. And they're really also like making it more difficult to find, even if you knew about, like, you really have to, it's like word of mouth because like you can't necessarily come up organically with keywords because they're going to shut you down. And that's what they did with Dr. Axe. And that's what they're trying to do right now is just have WebMD be the top thing that comes up. And people can't access like free information, which is exactly what the internet was meant to be.
Go to DuckDuckGo and use that search
instead of still, and I love it, but I'm still like, there's still things that should come up that like, I love DuckDuckGo, and there's one called Brave, and that one is now like an uncensored. And I know one of the like engineers and main people, like one of the founders, and he definitely like is full on gets it. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. They're based in San Francisco of all places too. So it's
Oh, wow. Okay. I'm impressed.
But yeah, I just think, like I have an ozone machine. Okay, so I ended up having a mold issue in my office. And then even with like everything I know, I was just like, I still don't know what to do about this because I don't want them to just bleach it. I want to keep the healthy microbiome of my house and my office as well. So I think those are like really interesting topics to discuss and deep dive, and you really can't find it online. And like, even I have a molecule air filter, and I'm always wonder, like, is this good? Like, I'm sure it's really good, but then I wonder, is it making it too clean? And like, is it like making it so that, yeah, I'm curious what you think about that. Are you a big fan of air filters?
I am. I have an air doctor. We have one in our bedroom. So just in case, we keep it running all the time as well and keep the filter changed in it. I do think air filters make a difference, especially if they're the HEPA plus or hyper HEPA plus a carbon or charcoal filter. That's really what I recommend. Okay. And then, really, as far as cleaning mold goes, I don't ever use bleach. It actually makes it into a more toxic compound. So try things like E3C or white vinegar or borax, especially for clothing. E3C is great. It's safe to clean mold, but usually if it's visible at all, there's stuff behind the walls or ceiling.
Yeah.
That's usually what that means.
I know. Yeah, we had just a leak, so we knew, but I mean, yeah, there's so much that you just don't even see and you don't even know. So how do you test, like, because I've had people come to my house and they're like, well, we need to get an air sample of like right where it is. But I'm like, well, I just want to like be, taking precautions and have it be preventative. So are there other things that you recommend for people, or is it always just an air sample of where you might think it could be?
Yeah, just to do it at home is an ERMI test or an EMA test, which is usually just swiping things or vacuuming and swiping right. And then if you want to do it professionally, like, Brian Carr of Mold Finders, he's online. They actually have a course now that people can take, a virtual course to learn where to look for mold in homes. And they actually they have a national company, and basically they look for mold nationally and virtually in people's houses. Wow. They have like 6 different places they have you look with them.
That's really interesting. Yeah, especially during this time when no one wants to go anywhere.
Yeah, and look up the Mold Finders online with Brian Carr, and he's really, really educational on social media as well.
Okay, cool. Yeah. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm really excited to go into your platform and check it out some more and learn more about all the other things you're sharing. You mentioned drainage and all sorts of things, so I'm really excited.
Oh yeah, I'm really trying to teach people how to be their own advocate, to trust themselves, to really use your intuition. I'm just as a guide. I can't tell you the answers, but here I'm going to provide the information so you know what to ask your docs, you know what to look for. And we get great feedback. So I hope to see you. Yeah, that would be amazing.
Yeah, that'd be really fun. So wonderful to connect. Have a wonderful day.